So in today's world, home is big business. There are numbers of television programs and books and magazines and websites that focus on home design and home landscaping and home furnishings. A range of educational degrees and certificate programs prepare people to design homes, build homes, assist homeowners in refurbishing their properties, guide homeowners in decorating every room, sell homes, buy homes, and even the exterior of the house and land is becoming more and more important. It becomes important to have that curb appeal of beauty and efficiency and comfort, even to the road. And of course, location, location, location matters. There's almost a desperate interest in the external trappings of home. The newest colors, the latest furniture, the best appliances, and the most beautiful curtains. Yet with all material things, they never quite satisfy. Ask yourself if your home currently nourishes your soul. Certainly there are places and pieces you like about it. I'm sure that there are. However, most of us would have an area that we think needs to be, well, more organized, redone, freshened up with a little paint. Maybe the garden needs to be weeded. Am I speaking to anyone today that's just shy of that perfect home? As much as the idea of the perfect home calls for us, I have yet to meet someone who would say that their home is currently in that exact state of what they would call perfect. So I wonder, what does the word home mean to you? To many people, home goes beyond a physical place. It has come to represent an environment of safety, security, and a place that promotes creativity. It has come to represent growth and a place that encourages a deepening of relationships. It's a place where you can be your true self. I wonder if all the attention to making the home perfect may disguise a more profound longing. In our hearts, maybe we want a real home, and maybe it isn't just about the paint. A real home is a place that nurtures us and comforts us, a place that relaxes us, a place of serenity, that allows our minds and emotions peace and security, a place without troubles. Do not let your hearts be troubled, Jesus tells his disciples in today's reading. Why would the disciples' hearts be troubled? Well, Jesus continues to say that he is heading to the cross. He keeps telling them that he's leaving. And they cannot see how his leaving could be good in any way. So Jesus says what he always says in the book of John. Trust me. Trust me. There are many things that this final speech of Jesus, this farewell discourse, gets compared to. But I think for me, the parallel is to a high school graduation speech. See, those speeches tend to say, look at everything you've learned. Remember who you are. Remember how you've been equipped for what's coming next. It's an encouraging statement shared by a former teacher to departing students. Jesus wants to give the disciples one more piece of wisdom from their rabbi and one more assurance of comfort while he still has time to do it. This is a request for the disciples to continue to trust in what Jesus has done, even when he is not standing next to them anymore. This is so important. The words of Jesus were intended to remind them that nothing has changed and assure them that they have learned their lessons well. These words also remind them that the mission and vision of their faith will continue even when their leader is gone. This is a message that is supposed to be inspiring and encouraging for the disciples, one of comfort, while still being a word of challenge for those that are already following Jesus to continue the good fight, to do what you know to do. This is a wonderfully reassuring passage where Jesus ensures that his disciples understand that God has a home for them being prepared for their future. Furthermore, he reveals that he's going back to this heavenly home to work with God in preparing this special place that has room for all. In response, one of the disciples speaks up and wants to make sure that he knows how to find this home. I think he maybe wanted Jesus to hand him a map. Yet Jesus says, you already know how to get there because you know me. Jesus consistently challenges the disciples to stop worrying about his future absence so that they can experience his way of life and truth in the present. Jesus challenges believers to trust in the possibility of the present, that he is the resurrection and the life now and always. And Jesus says that his home that he has prepared for them has many rooms. This is a sermon that began in March when I stood on the shores of Capernaum. And that picture you see at the front of your bulletin, I'm leaning over a railing in Capernaum. To the side there's what is called the White Synagogue. It was probably 100 years after Jesus. You can see layers of stone. And this is an area where the natural stone is that dark black. It's called basalt. That later synagogue brought in limestone from other places. So this basalt stone was used to make houses. And what you are seeing there is actually one block. So that's one block in the city of Capernaum. How this starts is one family builds one room. And they have space between these houses. And then, when a young man gets married, he goes and makes this promise to his wife and says, I'm coming back for you. I'm going to go attach a room to my father's house. I'm going to come back and bring you to my home. And there we will have a life together, our real life. That's where it begins. So off goes the man who gets married, promises this woman, doesn't tell her when he's coming back because he isn't quite sure, and one day shows up and takes her to this room, this home, at his father's house. So what you see here is exactly that, generation after generation. One room that started, then a bridegroom that came, built a room onto his father's home, brought his bride home. Then that generation built another room, until this whole city block, one room after another, generation after generation, provided a home at their father's house for the family to be safe. When I leaned over that railing, I thought, yeah, this I'm going to preach. I thought of you that day because I wanted you to understand that when Jesus says there's a room for you at my Father's house, there is something permanent there. There is something that does not stop based on how many people get there. We'll just put on another room. We'll build another story. We'll make another space. And Jesus promises his believers, the disciples that day, that I'm going to leave you. I'm going to walk away. And I'm coming back for my people someday. I can't tell you when. But when I come back, there will have been a room built onto my Father's house waiting for you, because I'm coming to get you. I'm coming to bring you home. And I'm coming to put you in your room, because that's when life begins. This is a very tangible understanding of what went on in society around them, as all of Jesus' teachings are. Ones where he stops and points and says, well, over there, see, it's like my Father's house. There's a room for you. Jesus uses what's in front of him and what is understandable to the culture to explain. And if we miss that piece, we miss that Jesus is welcoming them home and making a promise that he's going to show up again and that they are going to be provided for. Jesus so many times refers to his church and his people as the bride and him as the bridegroom, and this parallel fits perfectly with this story because he as a groom is going to come back and get his people. So yes, this was a comfort in an instant for the disciples. But this is what in seminary they would say is eschatological theology, end time stuff. This is what's going on in heaven that matters in earth. This is making sure that we know that we are going to be provided for beyond today. And this is our comfort. This is what matters when Jesus says, "You have a place with me." It isn't just today that you belong. It's long term. There is a space for you. And Jesus says, "You are mine." Jesus prepares this place where all are united into God's household. This matters to me. My mom used to kind of tease me when I was little, but it was the truth. She used to say, "You want everyone you love in the same building all the time." And I do. Ever since I was little, it wasn't okay unless Grandma and Grandpa and my brother and my parents, we were all in the same building. And so when I read this, that his Father's home has many rooms, we're all going to be in the same building. I think that maybe God put that biblical longing in me, because someday we will be there in one house with various rooms, and life will begin. Jesus continues to make additions for each and every one of us. See, I tend to preach living out our faith in the here and now because I think it's so important. So important. I think it's so important that we don't just keep our eyes to heaven. What's the saying? So heavenly minded that you're no earthly good, right? I don't want us to be that. So I talk so much about bringing heaven down and living out heaven here, and I still think that's so important. But we cannot forget that heaven is before us. There is a place for us, and those that we love have already moved into their rooms, and they've got a space for us next door too. The book of John challenges us to recognize our fears regarding the future and overcome those fears by abiding in Jesus' presence now. In that moment, I think of the words of St. Augustine, who said, "Our heart is restless until it finds rest in God." Knowing that there's a room there for us quiets my restless heart. I hope it does yours as well. Because I think the restlessness we feel because our current home is imperfect is that which points us towards the longing for a more perfect heavenly home. And no, I'm not talking about the paint and the curtains anymore. We know the brokenness of this world in which we live. We know the brokenness in our communities. We know the brokenness in our own hearts. But someday there will be a heavenly home. A perfect heavenly home. Each tear will be wiped away, says the book of Revelation. There will be pain no more. So it is the promise of Jesus that his Father's house has many rooms. And he goes to prepare a place for us, not just the disciples of then, but the disciples now. And he will come again to take us to himself, so that where he is, we may also be. Oh, church, that is a hope worth living for and a hope worth holding on to. May we do just that. Amen.